Have you ever spent your life chasing recognition, status, and the applause of others, only to find that when you finally reach the top, it feels hollow, cold, and strangely empty? Society tells you that success is measured by titles, wealth, and influence, that if you climb higher, you will somehow become fulfilled, complete, and admired. But what if that assumption is a trap? What if the ladder itself is leaning against a wall that doesn't support your true self, and every step you take is farther from what you are actually seeking? This emptiness, the quiet sense of dissatisfaction at the summit, is not a failure of your effort, but a revelation about the illusions that structure our lives. The usual story we are sold is simple: harder work, more ambition, greater recognition equals happiness. Yet when you step into that world, you often discover that the higher you climb, the thinner the air of authenticity becomes, and the louder the voices of comparison and doubt echo. The people around you may admire your achievements, envy your position, or fear your distance, but none of that fills the quiet hollowness that grows inside. There is a paradox here that we rarely talk about. What we pursue with urgency may be exactly what obscures our clarity, and the very ladder we believe will lift us may keep us from truly seeing. To be honest with yourself, there is a strange liberation in realizing that the pinnacle you imagined was never the prize. It was a mirage built from expectations, agreements, and the subtle pressures of a society that measures worth by external markers. When that truth settles in, a shift begins. You begin to notice the small, genuine pleasures of life that cannot be scaled or compared. You start to see that meaning is not located at the top, but within the rhythm of your own existence, the quiet moments, the honest conversations, the freedom to choose without approval or judgment. And it is here, in this subtle awakening, that a different kind of strength begins to emerge, one that is invisible to the ladder climbers still scrambling for validation. Before we go further, take a moment to reflect. How many steps have you taken toward a goal that, in hindsight, does not satisfy your deeper longing? And if you recognize it, will you keep climbing, or will you pause and consider the view from where you truly stand? By subscribing, sharing, and commenting, you help bring this reflection to other men who may be silently asking the same question, reminding them that they are not alone in their search for something more real, more sustaining, and more true. Before awakening to the hollowness at the top, life often feels like a constant race. Each morning begins with a checklist of ambitions. Each conversation is a performance, and each achievement is measured against the imagined success of others. You move through the world as if climbing a ladder is the only path, believing that validation will come from applause, titles, and recognition. Yet beneath the surface, there is a subtle anxiety, a quiet dissatisfaction that whispers whenever a promotion, a compliment, or a fleeting moment of admiration fades. The world tells you that your value is external, and you obey, tirelessly adjusting your steps to fit the expectations that were never truly yours. And then something shifts. Perhaps it begins with a moment of solitude, a pause when no one is watching, or a simple observation that the ladder itself seems unsteady. Slowly, you recognize that every step you took was for someone else's measure of worth, and the higher you climbed, the less you recognized yourself. The illusion of achievement starts to dissolve, revealing that what you pursued so fiercely never contained the meaning you imagined. It is not failure, it is revelation. You begin to see the structures around you, the silent agreements to compete, the unspoken hierarchies, and the constant pressure to perform. And in this seeing, a strange freedom arises, because you realize participation is optional. You can step back without judgment and simply observe the machinery you once obeyed. Externally, others may not understand this change. To them, you appear distant, perhaps cold or arrogant, as if you no longer care about the ladder or the accolades. Some may whisper, others may question, and some may attempt to pull you back into the familiar race. Yet, internally, you are more grounded than ever. Without the need to chase approval, every choice becomes clearer, every moment more vivid, and every connection more genuine. You begin to understand that the true measure of a man is not how high he climbs, but how fully he inhabits his own life. Strength is not in the ascent, but in the calm acceptance of where you stand, and the courage to let go of what never truly belonged to you. This shift also transforms how you view common concepts. Loneliness is no longer a weakness, but a space to discover depth. Silence is not emptiness, but clarity. The social ladder that once defined your identity now appears as an artifact, a construct designed to distract from the inner life that has always been present. Desire itself, once a frantic push upward, becomes a tool for discernment, guiding you toward what genuinely matters rather than what impresses or placates others. And as this awareness grows, your life changes in layers. Decisions become easier, distractions fade, and a subtle energy emerges that carries you forward without the weight of approval or pretense. As you begin to step away from the ladder, the world around you reacts in ways you may not expect. Colleagues, friends, and even family start to notice a shift in your presence. Some whisper that you have grown distant, aloof, or even arrogant, as if withdrawing from the endless climb makes you less human. Yet this is merely the perception of those still entangled in the illusion. They measure engagement by participation, equating compliance with worth, and they cannot see the calm authority that now resides within you. What looks like absence is actually presence. What looks like silence is clarity, and what seems like withdrawal is the cultivation of an inner strength that no recognition can grant. Your essence, once scattered across the ambitions and expectations of others, begins to crystallize. Freed from the compulsive need to impress or conform, you move with a quiet confidence, grounded in your own understanding rather than the approval of the crowd. Every gesture, every decision carries a sense of purpose that is invisible to those still racing upward. And in this tension between appearance and reality, a profound paradox emerges. The more disconnected you appear, the more connected you are to yourself. Others may misunderstand, misjudge, or even envy this change, yet none of it diminishes the subtle power that grows in the spaces where approval once dominated. This is also the stage where you begin to reinterpret familiar concepts. Power is no longer the accumulation of status or resources, but the ability to choose without coercion, to act in alignment with truth rather than expectation. Success is no longer defined by the applause of the crowd, but by the quiet satisfaction of living authentically. Even failure is recast. What once felt like a misstep or setback now appears as guidance, teaching you which pursuits were never yours to begin with. And as this perspective deepens, life begins to transform in subtle but profound ways, layering freedom, clarity, and self-possession into every choice and interaction. The tension between how you appear and who you have become acts as a mirror to the world. Some may attempt to draw you back into familiar structures, but your presence has changed the very terms of engagement. You no longer participate for validation, but because it aligns with your own values. And in this, a quiet power arises, not the loud power of command or authority, but the deep power of self-possession, an unshakable confidence in knowing that your worth is inherent and your path is chosen. This is the turning point where external judgment fades, leaving only the clarity of what is real and enduring. As you continue to step away from the frantic climb, the world's definitions begin to lose their grip on you. Loneliness, once feared as a mark of failure or social deficiency, transforms into a sanctuary, a space where you can hear the quietest thoughts and confront the truths you had long ignored. In the past, solitude felt like punishment, an exposure of inadequacy. Now it becomes a mirror reflecting what is real and lasting, revealing the patterns and attachments that had guided your every move. The silence you once avoided is now the most profound teacher. In its stillness, you learn to distinguish between impulses driven by expectation and impulses born from your own nature, and you discover that the life you feared missing is always present within, waiting for acknowledgement. Desire itself begins to shift in meaning. It no longer drives you toward others' approval or the accumulation of hollow markers of achievement. Instead, desire becomes selective, precise, and rooted in authenticity. You find yourself drawn only toward experiences, people, and pursuits that resonate with your own values, your own rhythms, rather than the clamor of comparison. The longing that once felt like a restless hunger now sharpens your discernment. You recognize that many of the things society claims to be essential, titles, possessions, recognition, are distractions, traps that obscure your vision and distance you from what truly matters. And in this recognition, freedom grows, subtle at first, then undeniable, manifesting not in the absence of desire, but in the choice to desire what sustains and fulfills, rather than what impresses or pacifies others. Meanwhile, the external world continues to react, often unconsciously testing the boundaries of your transformation. Some may question your choices, misunderstanding your calm as arrogance, your detachment as indifference. Yet their judgments, once capable of controlling your actions or thoughts, now pass over you like water off stone. You begin to see that the ladder of recognition and comparison that once dictated your life, is not a universal measure, but a framework you once agreed to participate in. Its authority dissolves when you refuse to act within its parameters. And with this refusal comes a layered clarity. You perceive the subtle mechanisms of influence, the ways others' expectations attempt to shape your movements, and you realize that your independence is not rebellion. It is the natural alignment of action with essence, the quiet power of living on your own terms. Even concepts that seemed unshakable, the nature of power, success, and masculinity, begin to transform. Power is not the ability to command, control, or be recognized. It is the ability to choose, to act in accordance with your truth, regardless of external judgment. Success is not the accumulation of accolades, but the cultivation of self-possession, the capacity to inhabit each moment fully, grounded in the integrity of your own awareness. Masculinity, once defined by conquest, display, and external validation, becomes measured by the depth of presence, the courage to face oneself, and the discipline to remain honest amidst pressure and expectation. In this reinterpretation, what seemed like weakness, the refusal to chase, the withdrawal from spectacle, the quietness of self-reflection, is revealed as immense strength, the kind of strength that cannot be granted or taken away because it originates within. And so the transformation deepens, layer upon layer. On the outside, others may still perceive distance or strangeness, but internally, life becomes richer, more resonant, and more aligned. Decisions flow with clarity, attachments loosen, and a sense of freedom settles over every interaction. You begin to see the patterns that previously enslaved you, the need for approval, the compulsive pursuit of status, the relentless comparison to others. With each insight, these patterns lose their hold, leaving behind the raw material of life itself, unmediated and authentic. The world no longer dictates the tempo of your life. Your own awareness does, and in this rhythm lies a subtle, profound contentment, a liberation that no external achievement could ever grant. As this new vision takes root, the consequences begin to unfold in ways that are both subtle and profound. Life no longer feels like a series of obligations or a performance for the gaze of others. Every choice, every action carries the weight and clarity of authenticity. Where once you were bound by the rhythm of expectation, you now move according to the cadence of your own insight. Social events, Professional pursuits and casual interactions are no longer traps for validation, but opportunities to engage with reality on your own terms. This is not withdrawal from life. It is a deeper immersion, a commitment to the substance of experience rather than its appearance. The transformation is gradual, layered, and almost imperceptible to the untrained eye. Yet every day it reshapes the texture of your existence, aligning your inner and outer worlds in ways that were previously unimaginable. Externally, the shift is both noticeable and disorienting to those who have not experienced it. Friends, colleagues, and family may comment on your change, labeling it as coldness, arrogance, or distance, interpreting your calm independence as rejection. Yet these perceptions, though potent, have no power over the inner clarity that now guides you. What looks like detachment is actually precision of presence. What appears as silence is an awareness of value and truth that has no need for constant affirmation. And in this tension between appearance and essence, a quiet authority emerges, one that is unshakable precisely because it does not seek to dominate or impress. Others may attempt to pull you back into the familiar ladder of validation, yet you move forward with a kind of serene inevitability, anchored by the inner knowledge that your life's worth is measured by depth and authenticity, not applause or envy. As your perspective deepens, everyday experiences begin to take on a new weight. Tasks and responsibilities are approached with discernment rather than compulsion. Relationships are navigated with clarity rather than fear, and moments of solitude are treasured rather than feared. The contrast between your former life, driven by anxiety, comparison, and performance, and your present life, rooted in intentionality, awareness, and self-possession, becomes stark. You recognize how many decisions were once dictated by the imagined expectations of others, and you see the freedom inherent in refusing those dictates. This is not merely a philosophical insight, it is a lived, tangible shift affecting your energy, your attention, and your sense of agency. The life you are now building is not defined by accumulation or recognition, but by the resonance of each moment and the alignment of your actions with your own truth. Even familiar concepts, success, desire, power, and achievement, undergo a radical reinterpretation. Success is no longer a measure of rank or reward. It is a measure of fidelity to yourself, of living in accordance with what is meaningful rather than what is expected. Desire, once a restless drive toward others' approval, becomes a guiding compass toward experiences and relationships that resonate with your inner values. Power is not the ability to compel others, but the freedom to act uncoerced, to navigate life with integrity and clarity. In this light, what was once perceived as weakness, solitude, refusal, non-participation, reveals itself as the source of the deepest strength, a strength invisible to those still scrambling up the ladder, yet undeniable in its effect on your life. And so, as these transformations accumulate, your life takes on layers of depth and resonance that were previously inaccessible. External appearances may suggest distance or strangeness, but internally, you are expanding into clarity, freedom, and grounded power. Each day reinforces the shift. Distractions fade, trivial anxieties lose their grip, and a sense of profound agency permeates your actions. You begin to see that the social ladder, once the axis of your life, was never truly the point. It was a structure designed to capture attention and enforce participation. Now, liberated from its sway, you discover that life is not found at the top, but in the quiet mastery of your own awareness, the intentional engagement with each moment, and the deep satisfaction of living fully, authentically, and freely. At this stage, the transformation is no longer subtle. It permeates every aspect of your existence. Decisions that once felt heavy with obligation now flow with ease, guided by clarity and a quiet sense of purpose. The noise of external expectation, the incessant comparisons, the subtle pressures, the invisible race to impress, loses its power to control you. Where you once sought validation in others' eyes, you now find fulfillment within the rhythm of your own awareness. Life becomes less about achievement and more about alignment, less about accumulation and more about presence. And paradoxically, the freedom you gain here is not isolation, but a deeper engagement with reality, where every interaction, choice, and moment carries resonance and significance because it is chosen rather than compelled. Externally, reactions continue to ripple outward. People may misunderstand your calm as arrogance, your detachment as aloofness, or your refusal to compete as weakness. Yet these judgments have little bearing on the life you now inhabit. The tension between appearance and essence sharpens your understanding of human behavior. You see the silent agreements that govern social interaction, the invisible hierarchies, the subtle compulsion to perform. And you also see what happens when a man ceases to participate in these illusions. He is not diminished, he is clarified, he is not rejected, he is real. In the eyes of others, you may appear strange, distant, or even enigmatic, but internally, a profound power emerges, the power of presence, of intentional action, of self-possession. This is a power that cannot be given, taken, or measured by external standards. It exists purely because you have chosen to inhabit yourself fully. The reinterpretation of familiar concepts continues to deepen. What once seemed like weakness, the withdrawal from social climbing, the refusal to pursue status for its own sake, the quiet in the face of expectation, is revealed as strength. What once appeared as emptiness, the solitude, the lack of constant recognition, the absence of applause, is revealed as fulfillment, and what once felt like loss, the decline of validation, the shrinking circle of superficial connections, is revealed as liberation. Each paradox resolves into clarity. Each contradiction becomes a lesson in freedom. You begin to recognize that the life you once desired, with all its external markers and social trophies, could never have provided the depth and satisfaction you now experience. The climb, the striving, the need for recognition, all of it was a distraction from the life that was always within reach, waiting quietly for you to see. Layer by layer, the transformation expands into every domain. Your relationships change, becoming more authentic. Your work shifts, becoming more aligned with purpose rather than performance. Your leisure, once consumed by the compulsion to impress, becomes a genuine engagement with what you enjoy. Even challenges, setbacks, and uncertainties no longer provoke anxiety because you recognize them as part of the natural rhythm of life rather than as indicators of failure. The higher you climb, the more you once believed that meaning could be found in comparison. Now, the higher you rise in clarity, the more you see that meaning has never been outside. It has always been inside. Each day reinforces this perspective. Each moment compounds the freedom. And every choice becomes a deliberate act of self-possession, weaving together a life of resonance, integrity, and invisible power. And so, at the edge of this transformation, the man who once climbed frantically, seeking validation and achievement, now stands with grounded strength, seeing clearly what was always true. The social ladder, with all its allure and promise, fades into background noise. Recognition, applause, envy, these are no longer measures of worth. Instead, the measure is awareness, alignment, and the courage to live in accordance with one's own essence. The culmination of this journey is not a peak to be reached, but a clarity to be inhabited. You begin to understand that every illusion surrendered, every attachment released, every step back from the frantic climb has brought you into a life richer, freer, and more deeply satisfying than anything the ladder could ever have offered. In the end, what once seemed like isolation is revealed as clarity. What appeared to be weakness is in truth power. And what felt like loss is the liberation of living authentically. The man who climbed tirelessly, seeking recognition, now sees that the summit was never the prize. The prize was always the discovery of his own presence, the cultivation of awareness, and the courage to move through life on his own terms. External judgments, expectations, and applause fade into insignificance, leaving only the quiet resonance of integrity and self-possession. The paradox is simple yet profound. Stepping away from the ladder does not diminish a man, it awakens him. He's not rejected by the world, he is simply aligned with it differently. Where others chase mirages, he inhabits substance. Where others measure life by comparison, he measures it by clarity, freedom, and depth. And in this, he discovers that fulfillment is not a destination atop a ladder, but a continuous practice of being fully present, fully conscious, and fully himself. The climb was never necessary, and in releasing it, he gains everything that truly matters. If this reflection resonates with you, consider subscribing for more insights that challenge conventional wisdom. Share this video with someone who may need to hear it, and comment with your own experiences or thoughts. Every comment creates connection, every share spreads reflection, and every view strengthens the understanding that life, when seen clearly, is richer than any ladder could ever suggest.